कितने पैसे चाहिए?
पैसा नहीं, इज्जत। मोहल्ले के चिरकुट लौंडे हरा रहे हैं फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स में। आप एक्सपर्ट हो, सिखाओ।
सिखाऊंगा तो जाने दोगे?
फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स का
असली अखाड़ा।
इस गेम में वित्तीय जोखिम के तत्व हैं और इसकी लत लग सकती है। कृपया जिम्मेदारी से और अपने जोखिम पर खेलें।
Hello and welcome to the Outside View presented by Fantasy Akhada. Well, we of course join you with the pre, mid, post shows of the matches, but today also we've joined you for a very special discussion. As you all know that India has announced their squad for the Commonwealth Games 2022. It is interesting to see that already a lot of waves of discussions have been produced on the squad that India has announced for the Commonwealth Games. I know that there are a lot of questions how the Indian setup looks like, what are the combinations, what we can expect from the side. And I promise that we have got you covered here as our experts join us in the show, Akash, Ghosh and Mohit Shah. Good evening, both of you, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So let's dive straight into the topic. Let's get to the batting unit first. So considering the conditions there at Edgbaston, we know that when it comes to T20I especially, it is going to be a good batting track. And when we speak of India's batting unit, I don't know why, but it reminds me of Mumbai. Now, why do I say this? We know that the Mumbai local trains are very much crowded. A little bit similar situation is here. India's top order batting, if you look at that, it looks a little bit crowded there. You have a lot of names, as you can see in this graphic itself. But coming to you, Akash, with my very first question, is it a sustainable strategy to have a lot of top order batters in T20Is? India currently has quite a few of them. You can name them for us.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's something that we noticed in the onset when the team came out. All the batting options. If you look at that graphic, it shows Smriti Mandhana, Shafali Verma are probably the first opening choices that we have. There is S. Meghna, Jamima Rodriguez, Tanya Bhatia, Yastika Bhatia, Harmanpreet Kaur, Harleen Kaur. All these batters, all their preferred positions are supposedly in the top four. If I go one by one, say for that matter, Jamima Rodriguez, she prefers to bat in the top four. She's done that. Even in the 100 in the domestic leagues that she plays, she has batted in the top order. Harleen Deol is another player who has come back into the T20I side. If you look at her preferred batting option is also number 4. Her success that she found in the senior T20 women's trophy last year, late last year, that came while she was batting in the opening slot. So that's something opening or in the top 3. So that's something that India has to ponder upon, because in T20 cricket we have seen this happen from time to time with the Indian team, that the top order, they have a settled top order, but it's the finishers that becomes a problem. At number 4, number 5, number 6, that's a conundrum that India has been sort of trying to solve by themselves in the last few series, in the last few tournaments. But that's something that they need to work on. And I don't get the strategy around this, that they have got these players who are preferably batting at top 4, in the top 4, who bats top 5 and top 6. And that's something that heading into the Commonwealth Games will be interesting to see how India's middle order shapes up and what are the choices that they go for, who do they back. If you remember the recent Sri Lanka series, Jamima Rodriguez, for an instance, she batted at number 5. Yastika Bhatia, who's again somebody who can bat in the top order and has scored a lot of runs batting in the top order for a domestic side, had to come down and bat at 6. So these are some of the decisions that I think India will be sort of planning on in the next few weeks, and we'll see how it goes when they play their first game.
It will be indeed interesting to see how that top order shapes up and the middle order as well. We of course know that there are quite a few players who are at the top order, and of course we also know that probably that is the position that suits their game best, at least when it comes to the T20Is. But speaking of the lower middle order, the finisher, that role becomes very important when it comes to the frenetic format of the game, the T20Is. We've seen in the recent past that getting runs at a good strike rate down the order has been an issue that has plagued India. We've seen that probably there hasn't been two good finishes in the recent past. So who, according to you, Mohit, amongst this setup, is that player that comes to your mind when it comes to finishing the game for India? or piling up those important runs, coming in at number 6 and number 7 position. In fact, when you're batting first, it becomes very important because these days the demands of the game has become higher, and more the target, more the competition, and finishing game becomes very much important there, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Finishing games is very important, but I would think like for a strong team, you would want your top 5 or 6 to do the majority of the business. So just keeping this graphic in mind, if we look at this, sorry, like Akash said, like Smriti Mandana and Shafali Verma are certainties as the top two, and they will definitely open unless one of them is injured. So the top two spots are taken care of. Then moving down, I think the two players who are definite certainties in the top 6 out of these are Jemima and Harmanpreet Kaur. I think both of them are equally capable of batting anywhere from 3 to 5. We saw Jemima bat at number 5 against Sri Lanka. She averaged 36 at a strike rate of 114, which are great numbers. And as for Harmanpreet, her career records are almost identical at number 4, 5, and 6. So she's a batter who can bat in those positions pretty well. So then, like, it comes down to what does the team want to do? I have a feeling Harmanpreet wants to make this team like the supernovas, where someone like Pooja Vastrakar is a floater who can move up and down the order. So if your top two bat 12 overs, I think Pooja Vastrakar will bat at 4 and Harman will bat at 3. If you lose 2 wickets early, then maybe you'll have Yastika Bhatia at 3, Harleen Deol at 4, and then Harman and Pooja at 5 and 6. Because we've seen enough from Pooja Vastrakar now to know that she's somebody who can easily bat at number 6. Like in domestic cricket, she bats even higher, has had lots of success with Madhya Pradesh. And in T20 cricket, you want your best batters to bat in the top 6. And she's shown the kind of temperament to like not just face 10, 20 balls, but even face 30 balls. Like the last ODI was a shining example. She only hit sixes or took singles and twos. And that is what you need in T20 cricket. Like if you can hit sixes and rotate the strike, you can't get much better than that. So I think Pooja Vastrakar probably will be India's number 6, and Harman and Jemmy will take 2 of the 3 slots between 3 to 5. And I think the one other slot will be a toss up between Yastika and Harleen Deol, because S. Meghna didn't do enough to justify a place in the starting 11 for my liking. So at least at the beginning, I have a feeling India might stick with Yastika Bhatia, bat her at 3, Harman at 4, Jemmy at 5, and then Pooja Vastrakar at 6. Because I think the only other Indian batters who are really good in these positions are probably Dayal and Himlata, who's not played for a long time now. Somebody like Swagatika Rath has done it for Railways in the past, but this year she opened in quite a few games, so again she wasn't an option. But the one other batter who's consistently done it for India in the past is Richa Ghosh, but she's in the standbys here. So Richa Ghosh's omission is probably the biggest talking point in this squad for me. Otherwise, I think it's a really good squad. But like you said, the number 6 and 7 position is probably one area of concern. But I think India probably chose to bat till number 6 and then play 5 proper bowlers because that is their weaker link. So maybe that is why Richa missed out.
So as you rightly mentioned about Richa Ghosh's exclusion, so further, before we talk further about that, let's have a look at India's squad that has been announced for this mega event for the Commonwealth Games 2022. Of course, we know that when it comes to the batters, we have Smriti, Shafali, Meghna, and Jemima, all top order batters there. Strong all-rounding options as well with Harman, Pooja, Harleen, Deepti, and Sneh Rana coming in back to the setup. She did miss the Sri Lanka series, but she's now back in the setup. Wicket keepers, you have Tanya Bhatia, you have Yastika Bhatia. When it comes to bowlers, you have spinning option there with Radha Yadav and Rajeshwari Gaikwad. With the pacers, you have Meghna Singh, you have Renuka Singh Thakur as well. But standbys, Simran Dil Bahadur, Richa Ghosh, and Poonam Yadav. That brings us to the talks of Richa Ghosh. It has been a little bit of concern for India. We haven't seen her amongst runs in the recent past. In the Women's T20 Challenge also, we saw that she wasn't amongst runs. Similar thing happened in the series against Sri Lanka as well. She was struggling there. And when it comes to wicket keepers and of this squad at least, you have Yastika Bhatia, you have Tanya Bhatia. Yastika Bhatia has looked promising there. But when it comes to Tanya Bhatia, we also have to remember that she last played a T20I game in the T20 World Cup 2020, the final. It has been a big gap, but she has been preferred in the first 15 member squad, and Richa Ghosh has been included as the standby player. She's still young, Richa Ghosh, a lot to offer probably she has to the Indian side. But what, according to you, Akash, is that factor that she did not find her place in the first 15 member squad? Is it more to do with her wicket keeping skills?
Mostly not, because initially when we saw Richa and her keeping, I think people did have some concerns about it. But over the last few months, say a year or something, she has improved. I mean, during the World Cup, we did see her perform well with the gloves behind the stumps. So that's something that you have to keep a pointer of. But in the Sri Lanka series, I was slightly surprised. They wanted to try Yastika is something that we got looking at how they went about their business, the team management. It felt that they wanted to try Yastika and give us some game time behind the stumps, which is a fair point. But again, to drop somebody of not give her the gloves, I mean, Richa Ghosh, it was a little surprising for my liking. And on top of that, you see her batting skills are something that I feel is a little different, adds a little bit more depth to the how the Indian team goes about. She's somebody who can strike the ball really hard, and we have seen she holds the record for the fastest ODI 50 in Indian cricket history. So that's something that you have to note. On top of that, Yastika also, like Yastika's batting, Yastika and Tanya Bhatia, both are terrific batters, make no mistakes. But I don't know if they can be the right people to come in the last few batting slots, number 5, number 6. Are they versatile enough? Even with Tanya Bhatia, we have seen even during the Women's T20 Challenge, she played a very small knock in that afternoon game where she got a run about 30-34, something like that. That was a good knock considering the situation. So she can do that. If the team is, say, 2 wickets down, as Mohit suggested, I would like to throw one name that Tanya Bhatia can come in and do a job, maybe build a partnership with somebody and try to get India to recover from that. But does she have the power game to go on and finish? That's the reason why we put her in her preferred position in top 4, because I think she's somebody who can play a role with the bat in this team. But it has to be justified and has to be said that whether it's at number 6, number 5, I don't think it has to be in the top 4 if she fits. And that's the reason why it's a little surprising that they have not taken Richa to the Commonwealth Games and put her in the standbys. And she played as a pure batter in the ODI series, make no mistake. So, like, after that, if you drop somebody, it kind of tells you that it's because of her batting. She hasn't found runs. That's true. But I don't see keeping her out of the 11 can help India to get her back into form, and she's a young player. She's very young and she's very talented. We all know that. So it's about treating her in a way and taking that case and giving her more and more game time. The worst part is she can't go back now and play some domestic cricket because there is nothing that is happening right now. So it's a little bit of a concern for India that who do they go for as a keeper in the Commonwealth Games. If they put Yastika, if you bring in Yastika Bhatia, ideally she should be batting in the top 4, as I previously said. Same goes for Tanya Bhatia. But if you play them at number 5 and number 6, does it work or not is something that I think Harmanpreet Kaur and think tank will be worried for.
That would definitely be a concern for the think tank of India. And of course, when we talk about Richa Ghosh, we know she's young, she has a lot to offer, and we've seen her potential with the bat. So we'll be all hoping that we get to see more of her in the coming days. But let's get to India's bowling now. Let's talk about the spinners first. Spin it to win it is the formula, they say it. So let's start with the spinners, as I mentioned before. So when we talk about the spin attack of India, you have Harmanpreet Kaur, Sneh Rana and Deepti there with your right arm off spinners. When it comes to the left arm orthodox, you have Rajeshwari, you have Radha Yadav there. Of course, probably India misses a specialist leg spinner there. Maybe you have an option there in Harleen Deol. But when it comes to specialist leg spinner, probably it is a positive for any team to possess. We've seen that the skippers get a liberty there to use their combinations in a better way when you have specialist bowlers coming in and doing their job for the side. Mind you, you have a specialist leg spinner, but she is in the standby Poonam Yadav. We've seen her do the job for the side in the T20 World Cup in the very first game, where she came into 4 and did the job for the side. But in the recent past, we've seen that she's been in and out in the side, was a part of the series against Sri Lanka as well, but didn't get an opportunity to be in the 11. After India won the series, we thought that she might make it to the final game, but again, we did not see her play. How do you look at this situation, Akash? Because she's an experienced bowler, but if she is good enough to be in the 15 squad, does India should have thought of getting her into that playing 11 when it was the Sri Lanka series? And probably they miss a little bit of variety there when it comes to the spin attack for this mega event.
We do. I think even though they have got really quality spinners, and you could make a point saying Rajeshwari and Radha, they are two different types of left-arm orthodox spinners. If you want to make a point about Snehrana and Deepthi, Snehrana gives a bit more flight to the delivery than Deepthi. So that's something that they differ in some of the other ways. But again, I think having a leg spinner, a specialist leg spinner, as you rightly mentioned, specialist leg spinner in the team in T20 cricket is a big, huge advantage for a captain. It's also one of those things that leg spin, because it's sort of still a rare thing in the women's game. A lot of batters struggle against it. The reason why we did see Poonam Yadav have success in the past was sort of because that she adds that variety. When you have ballers like there is nothing that batters can plan. If there is an off spinner, you can think that okay, we'll tackle them out. Then there is a left arm spinner, we can tackle them on. Then you have a leg spinner in, so that creates that doubt in the batter's mind. So that's something that you need in T20 cricket, and I feel, and that's something a lot of teams have now. With time, they've got leg spinners who can come in and bowl those overs. And always a leg spinner is always a wicket-taking option. And in T20 cricket, we all try to think all captains want our wickets, because that's the way they can contain the other teams and the score that they make. So that's why. And then with Poonam Yadav, it's a bit of a curious case with Poonam Yadav, because she has been constantly picked in the squad. It's not like they've dropped her out or told her to go back to domestic cricket and figure out if she's not performing, why she's not performing well, or up to the mark, or up to her standards. But it's the question that they keep picking her and they don't play her in 11. And that begs the question that if you want to have a leg spinner, say in the standby, how about you try, if you are looking past Poonam Yadav, how about you try a young leg spinner? I mean, I think Mohit can elaborate on this, that there are leg spinners out there in the Indian cricket system who are young and who are good, who might get a call in. And one thing that what we hear about Poonam Yadav from time to time is the fact that her pace becomes a bit of a problem now. People have started figuring out how to tackle her at the pace. That was her strength back then. Now it's not. So given all those situations, you can't tell Poonam Yadav to go and change her pace and get maybe 10 kilometers faster, but that's not how it works. That's something that I think Indian management should have thought about. But I think the team is good. The spin attack is good. And they have been a strength for the Indian team in the past as well. If you look at, you spoke about the 2020 World Cup. I'll take you back to 2018 T20 World Cup as well, where the spinners did well. And that was one of the key factors why India did well in those tournaments. So that's something that we have to see, we have to look out for. And make no mistake, the pitch in Edgbaston, there are going to be 16 games. It's late July, early August. So that's when the pitch in England starts cranking up a little bit. So the spinners might have a little bit more from the surface than they would have had initially. So that's looking all these factors. I think India has got a good spin contingent, make no mistake. But however, they could have had a leg spinner in the mix. Harleen again is a good option, but it's about game time. Putting somebody, having enough number of games under their belt. Does Harleen have that kind of enough number of games under her belt, bowling leg spin in tough situations against batters like Alisa Healy, say for that matter, somebody? That's something that the management could have looked into. But again, as I said, the spin attack is good.
Spin attack is good enough. And of course, as you mentioned about Harleen Deol there, she was a part of the ODI. She was part of the ODI squad when it comes to the Sri Lanka series. Now she's made it to the T20I squad when it comes to the Commonwealth Games. And as predicted by you, that spin might have a little bit more say in Edgbaston, considering the conditions. It would be for all of us to watch how the spin attacks unleashes in Edgbaston. But you rightly mentioned, Akash, that there are going to be a lot of games played, because we know that the entire tournament is going to be played at the Edgbaston cricket ground. And considering the conditions there, the pitch might turn a little bit more into the slower side. So moving on to the pace attack of India there, do you think, Mohit, that when it comes to Renuka Singh Thakur, Meghna Singh and Pooja Vastrakar, these are the pace bowling options that India currently possesses? But when it comes to Renuka Singh Thakur, with the pace she has, do you think if there is not enough swing there at the Edgbaston, not enough help from the surface, the attack might look one-dimensional?
I don't think so. Like, at least as far as the three pacers are concerned, all of them have very different bowling styles. Like Renuka Thakur predominantly swings the ball in and brings it into the right-handers. Meghna Singh, on the other hand, gets the ball to swing away from the right-handers and into the left-handers. So that's a really good contrast between the two of them. Like we saw it during the Sri Lanka series as well. Like the opening batters were in a lot of trouble because both the bowlers had such contrasting styles. And Meghna Singh also has a little more pace than Renuka Singh Thakur. Whereas Pooja Vastrakar is completely different to the two of them. She's not really a bowler who relies a lot on swing. She either hits the deck hard and like hustles people for bounce or like goes really full and nails those Yorkers. So I don't think variety is a concern as far as India's pace bowlers are concerned. All of them are right armers, but that's how it is in the women's game. Like predominantly 90% of the pacers that are currently playing international cricket are right armers. So I don't think the variety is a problem. Probably India are a pacer short though, because Simran's in the reserves, they only have picked three pacers here. And like you said, if the conditions are aiding swing bowling or if there's a lot of assistance for the pacers, India might probably find themselves a pacer short because I consider Pooja Vastrakar to be a pure all-rounder now. So she definitely can bowl 4 overs in every T20 game, but the fixtures are quite close to each other. And India have taken a view of managing her bowling workloads in the recent past. So I don't know if she will be bowling 4 overs every single time. And considering there can always be injury concerns, I would have probably preferred them picking one extra pacer instead of having so many top order batters like we touched upon earlier in the show. So maybe four pacers, four spinners, especially considering two of the spinners and Pooja Vastrakar are very good all rounders. They could have easily picked one pacer more because if we look at this list, there's Sneh Rana there, there's Deepti Sharma there, there's Pooja Vastrakar there. All these three players are capable of bowling 4 overs in every single match and batting at 6, 7, or 8. So I think the all-round strength is one of the big strengths of this team, and how these three players perform, both with the bat and with the ball, might ultimately determine how far India goes because both Deepti and Pooja will probably be India's first choice death bowlers as well.
I think we lost her, Mohit. And speaking of the pace bowling lineup, which has done really well, Mohit, I just wanted to know your idea. If there was an option of picking another pacer in, bringing another pacer in, who would that be? As you mentioned that India are a pacer short, it seems, and that's pretty right to say because if the conditions are a little bit, say, friendlier towards the pacers, we might feel a little short. So in that situation, who would you have preferred in the team?
I think Simran would have been a good choice. Like, probably would have picked Simran instead of S. Meghna or Harleen Deol in the 15-player squad because of the courage she has. Like, we've seen it time and again, both in the Women's T20 Challenge and in the Senior Women's T20 Trophy. This is a bowler who's not afraid of bowling the difficult overs, contributes a lot in the field, is probably one of India's best fielders. And with the bat, too, like we were talking about that role at number 7, number 8. I think Simran has an excellent strike rate in those positions, both at the domestic level as well as in the Women's T20 Challenge. So I would have probably picked Simran there in the 15-member squad as the fourth pacer. What about you, though? Like, if you had to pick a fourth pacer, who would you have gone with?
I think it's pretty same for me as well. Like Simran was when she was picked for the T20 series in Sri Lanka. I honestly felt that was a good move considering what we have seen of her of late. She did well in that women's T20 challenge. She went a little under the radar with her bowling as well, but she bowled a couple of really good spells on that wicket, which was very friendly towards the batters. But again, she tried. She manages her pace is such. I think the batters do struggle at times to sort of get on with it and get to the second tier. That's something that there is with her. And she's a very smart player. You have already spoken about her a lot of times, but we know that she's a very smart cricketer. She's a very good fielder. And again, she adds that depth with the bat, and we saw what she can do in that Women's T20 Challenge final. So that's something that India could have gone in with. But again, overall, the squad looks good, to be honest. You can debate about a couple of spots here and there. But Mohit, would you say this team has gotten in them to go ahead and get that gold medal? Because that's something that the T20 side has been sort of eyeing for in the last few years. We had that World Cup in West Indies where we could have gone on to win it. We did not. We lost the semi-final. Then there was that obviously that heartbreaking loss in Melbourne. So is this the time that the Harman's team will go out there and get that gold?
I think they are definite medal contenders. Like, I would be very disappointed if they don't win a medal, because they are one of the top 3 T20I sides in the world, along with England and Australia. And I think looking at the current way the things are functioning and how England and Australia are set up, I think India has as good a chance as any other team to defeat these two teams. Like, even in the 50-over World Cup, like you rightly pointed out, the 2018 and 2020 T20 World Cups, and India did actually defeat Australia in the group stage match in the latter of those two tournaments. And we saw it in the 50-over World Cup as well, that India was one of the few teams who actually put enough runs on the board against Australia, but ended up losing the match. So I think they definitely have enough quality to defeat both of these teams. And I think they have a lot of match winners right through the order, both especially with the bat and also with the ball, because we've seen there has been an immense improvement in somebody like Pooja Vastrakar in the last 12 months. We've also seen Rajeshwari Gaikwad coming into her own this year after having a slightly lean year last year.
I guess that we've lost the connection with Mohit there. Never mind, of course, we'll continue the talks. It happens, it's been raining. That's why I also lost my connection in between. But before we wrap this discussion up, we've been talking about how India's setup looked like for this mega event, the much awaited Commonwealth Games, of course. But before we wrap this discussion up, I'll move to our experts when it comes to what the ideal playing 11 of India would look like. I'll come to you, Akash, first. What, according to you, should be the playing 11 for India for the first match?
We'll have to, like, it's a call that a lot of people will. That's something that always makes debates in the cricketing circles, that who plays in the 11. That's something that everybody wants to talk about. But if you look at this Indian squad, it's very simple. You have to pick, obviously, Smriti and Shefali at the top. I think that there's no mistake there. I generally pick a T20 team depending on deciding who are the best batters, say in the top 4 or 5. So obviously, I think Harman and Jimmy will be the top 2 players who I will definitely put in the top 4. And ideally, I think India should back these 4 to be there in that core, to form that core. The main reason why I say that is because in T20 cricket, it's a game of 120 balls. And you want your best batters to face as many deliveries as possible for you to have a chance. If these 4 batters cannot get going and get a score, I think India is not going to win anyway. So it doesn't matter if they get to 130 and lose it in a tournament. You would say that, yeah, there's 100 and what. But I think it doesn't really matter if India get a 130 score or 150 and then lose. But if these 4 can go ahead and do their best, we know India can get to those big totals of 170, 180, 190s. And that is when it will be easier for the slightly experienced pace bowling unit, I would say, to get the job done for them. So that's the top 4 that I will go for. One keeper I have to pick. Yastika is one. I think I'll pick Yastika. Harleen Deol, obviously, I like what Harleen provides. There is that extra bit of, she's a very good fielder, we know. There's an extra bit of advantage of having her, because she can also come and bowl some overs. That is something that Harman has used her for in the recent series. And going by how Harman keeps her team, it seems, don't be surprised if there are 7-8 bowling options changing ends from time to time in the T20 game. And it's good, actually. It's a good move. So that's the top 6 that I would go for. Then obviously I would bring Sneh Rana, Pooja Vastrakar, Deepti Sharma. And for the pacer, I would go for maybe I'll pick Radha Yadav and also pick Renuka Singh Thakur. One between Renuka Singh Thakur and Meghna Singh. And I think that should be a good enough team to go ahead and win a match in the Commonwealth Games.
Well, that is Akash's playing 11 of India. Moving on to Mohit. Mohit, what would be your ideal playing 11 of India?
Yeah, I largely agree with Akash, but probably I would make a change or two. So, like he rightly said, and he hit the nail on the head about your best 4 batters should bat at the top and face the majority of the deliveries, because 120 is not a lot of deliveries. So, yeah, Smriti and Shafali definitely open the batting for me. Jemmy and Harman can be number 3 and 4. Or if a wicket falls early, Yastika can be number 3 and then Harman and Jemmy to follow. So 3, 4 and 5 would be those 3 for me. Coming to the number 6 position, that is where I have a different name. I think like you can't bat someone like Pooja Vastrakar anywhere below 6, considering the kind of form that she's in and the game-changing potential that she has. So I think Pooja Vastrakar would be my pick for number 6. At number 7, I would want to have somebody like Sneh Rana, because again, like she's done the job for India in ODIs and tests at that position. For Railway, she bats higher. And 7 is a good position for her because like she's not played a lot of T20 international cricket, but her strike rate is pretty good in the lower middle order at number 7 and 8 especially. I think like it's well over 100. So I would go with Sneh Rana at number 7. Deepti Sharma is a name that like probably draws a lot of criticism, and her spot is always like questioned a lot. And to be fair, like her T20I bowling hasn't always been up to the mark. She tends to blow very hot and cold. But just because this is a really big tournament and you don't have too many experienced bowlers, you have to pick Deepti Sharma, at least in the first match. And she also lengthens the batting order. Like we saw it against Sri Lanka in one of the T20I. She came in at number 7 or 8 and hit a quick 20 of 8 balls. She said before the T20 challenge that she's worked on her power game. And earlier we saw that she was very restricted. Like mid-wicket was the one area where she could score freely. But her hitting down the ground, like targeting mid-on, mid-off, is something she's gotten better at. So I think she has a slightly wider range of shots. So Deepti Sharma would be my number 8. Then coming to the 3 bowling options, I think Renuka Singh Thakur and Rajeshwari Gaikwad are the 2 shoo-ins. They definitely have to be there. They were India's best bowlers in the ODI series against Sri Lanka in terms of economy and wickets. So those 2 definitely have to be there. The 11th spot is something that you can decide based on conditions, because Radha Yadav has not been in the kind of form that we have seen her be in the past. Like she was at her peak around the 2020 World Cup, bowled really well. Then in the 2021 Women's T20 Challenge also, she bowled really well. But currently she's slightly low on confidence. But again, this is a bowler who's ready to bowl at any stage of the innings. So you can have her probably in the first match because it's against Australia and they obviously prefer pace on the ball more than spin. And also the fact that Meghna Singh's never played a T20I. So asking her to debut in front of Australia and the CWG might be too much pressure. So start with Radha Yadav, and then obviously if it's a pitch which aids the pace bowlers a lot, you always have Meghna Singh, was a very good option, especially with the new ball. So yeah, that would be my playing 11 for the first match. Radha Yadav would be the third bowler who sneaks into my 11.
Okay, then that is the playing 11 given by our experts. So women's cricket will be played for the first time in the Commonwealth Games. The T20 format will be played there, and the matches will start from 29th of July. India and Australia will kickstart the tournament, and we are all excited to see how that pans out. We'll of course join you even then with all the updates, and now currently for all the updates on women's cricket, you know where you need to tune in, only to Women's Cricket Zone.
ये पक्का अब सीख तो गए, अब तो जाने दो मुझे।
ठहर जाइए, कोई प्रॉब्लम हो गई तो कहाँ ढूंढेंगे आपको?
फैंटेसी अखाड़ा का 24/7 कस्टमर सर्विस है, आपकी प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व करवा देंगे।
कल जाने देंगे।
फैंटेसी स्पोर्ट्स का असली अखाड़ा।
इस गेम में वित्तीय जोखिम के तत्व हैं और इसकी लत लग सकती है। कृपया जिम्मेदारी से और अपने जोखिम पर खेलें।